Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about programs that enhance our community so that we can build bigger and better portfolios while providing options for our residents to achieve self-sufficiency. I'm your host, Tony McGinnis, Executive Director, CEO with the Huntsville Housing Authority. Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about situations and lifestyle information that can help our residents and give us an opportunity and a perspective on what's going on around the city, and giving us an opportunity to just inform our residents and hopefully lead them to a life of self-sufficiency. Today, we are honored to have Lindsay Pruitt on the show. Lindsay, we thank you for being here today, and we're going to jump right into it. You know, this is season 3 of Life in the Bricks, and we want to thank you for being the very first guest of the year to join the podcast. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what brought you to Huntsville.
So first, Tony, I want to say I love what you're doing with your show. I've been watching you, and I just love the foundation that you're setting. So I appreciate you having me here.
Oh, no problem.
So my name is Lindsay Pruitt. I am the owner broker of 5-Star Real Estate. We're located in Madison, Alabama. I'm originally from Gaston, Alabama, so not too far up the road. What brought me to Huntsville was I went off to college, and I had my son at a very, very young age, and so I decided, hey, I need to do something. I need to do something different. So my mom was in Gaston, and I was trying to figure out my life. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I had an aunt here, and so my aunt, she had been living here for forever. So I said, instead of going back to my hometown, because there's not a lot of opportunity where I was from, I'm gonna move to Huntsville. And I reached out to my aunt, and she was like, hey, come on, you're welcome. So I started my life here then. So that's what brought me here, because I didn't want to go back to my hometown. I knew eventually when I got into, my career, that I was going to try to go back and reach back to my community, but I had to start over in Huntsville. And so that's what brought me here.
Again, this is Lindsay Pruitt with 5-Star Real Estate. And you talked about the challenge that you had with having a son at a very early age, and what was your motivation in continuing to move on, even though some people would consider that as a way to make an excuse and not to thrive for a better life? What were your motivations behind just knowing that, hey, I still got to press forward?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be more than what I saw. I had a wonderful life. My mama was hardworking, but I don't know how to explain it, but I just knew that I wanted to be something more than where I grew up at. And I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, who were business owners or, had their own house and just nice cars and nice things. And I just felt like I was in the wrong space. So when I got pregnant with my son, it just changed my perspective. I was like, I want my life to look a certain way. And in order to do that, I need to be around those type of people. And the opportunity where I was at just wasn't there. Once I think what changed my mind and my perspective on a lot of things is when I went to college. I saw people living different. They had certain things that I hadn't been around. The experience was different. I got more into my culture. I mean, it was just a different experience. Just going to college for the time that I did, it was just life changing for me. So I knew I wanted more. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just knew that I wanted to have a big life.
Yeah, you actually speaking to a group of individuals. I know there are going to be people on this who hear this, who it may be a wake-up call for them, because there's a lot of people who want more, but
Mhm.
because of a life altering situation, they might feel they don't deserve that. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a gem to be able to share that with everybody who's going to get a chance to see this and hear this. And so I'm grateful and thankful that you shared that, because there are a lot of people who are in some of the public housing areas that we manage who are just waiting to hear a nugget like that, who
Mhm.
may say, this is me, this is what I want to do. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now you're in the real estate industry. How long have you been in real estate?
So I got my license in 2009. I worked and I did real estate part time. Um, I've been full time real estate for about 9 years, and I started my brokerage 5 years ago. June 1st to be 5 years for me, so I'm excited about that. So
Awesome.
I've been in the real estate market for a while.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate that. And congratulations, or early congratulations on five
Thank
years
you.
being in the business on your own. And how's that? You talk about being a boss and having your own real estate industry, but what's the meaning behind five-star real estate? What's the meaning behind it?
Mhm. So most people think that it's like five-star service and all of that because you see five-star everywhere. But when I started my brand 5 years ago, I really, really took a lot of time to think about what the future of my brand would look like, not just the right now. So it's 5 points to a star. So every point in my company has a purpose. So
Hmm.
transactional, of course, where we help buyers. I always knew I wanted to be a buyer's brokerage. I know a lot of people say list to last and things like that, but I knew that buyers is what I wanted to hone on in because I enjoyed working with buyers when I did general real estate and new construction. Um, and then construction, I wanted to get into construction, excavation, development, and then, of course, the fifth point will be education. So I did have the opportunity to be a part of my first experience building a house from the ground up with one of my investors. Last year, it was a workforce house. But to answer your question, it's more about the points of the star versus just like five-star service. It's a it's a process that I want to do over the next 5 to 10 years to be like a one-stop shop for real estate.
Awesome. Awesome. So in that same vein, what were some of the experiences that made you want to be a buyer's brokerage and to work for buyers here in Huntsville? And not only in Huntsville, but there may have been some things back in Gaston that made you want to kind of stay in this lane and thrive in this lane. What were some of those experiences that made you want to do this?
Mhm. So when I first got into real estate, I didn't know what I was doing. Me and my first time buyer at that point, she didn't know what she was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And we kind of learned together. And I learned so much during that process. When she was going through the pre-approval process, I was really involved. She went through two lenders that really, in my opinion, mistreated her because of her price range and things like that. And when I experienced that with her in those moments, it just let me know if a buyer didn't have representation, that they wouldn't get the quality of service that they deserve, no matter what price range they were in. Um, the other thing that I had to teach myself is even though you're in those moments where you feel like someone is being treated unfairly, it taught me a level of professionalism. It taught me a level of patience. It taught me a level of thinking outside the block that I grew up on because the goal is to get this person to home ownership. So I knew when I started Five Star that I would work with buyers because I felt like from those experiences that I had with my buyers in those initial stages of home ownership that
Mhm.
we were needed. It's so many things that buyers don't know, and it's such a stressful process going through the pre-approval, getting a home inspection and things that you don't know, you don't ask if you don't know. So it'll put them in a different situation that might be um that might not be good for them. So I knew I was going to be a buyer's brokerage. And I knew that I was going to be simple, transparent, and honest with all of my buyers. And that was something that led me to opening my own brokerage. Does that make sense?
It does. And so one of the things that I want to ask is, how do you see yourself or your company continuing to work with, because we have a lot of potential first-time homeowners.
Hmm.
And how do you see yourself working with those individuals who might need a little more experience? I mean, assistance because they don't have the experience. How do you see yourself lining yourself up to work for those potential first-time homeowners based on the experience that you have now? And knowing that, okay, that's my lane. I want to work with these individuals because, like you said, a lot of people just don't want to work with the buyer who's just not ready to purchase over the next 25, 30 days. How do you see yourself lining your company up to work with those individuals who need that little extra assistance?
One thing I think that's most important is that I'm walking in my purpose. Some people get into real estate for the money. Of course, everyone wants to make money, but this is my purpose. This is my passion. So, when I'm working with a buyer, it doesn't matter if they're ready right now. I get joy out of going through the process, going on the journey with them, seeing them get over hurdles with credit and things like that, and seeing that they can do it. Because I think with most home buyers, especially first time home buyers, it's a mindset. You just don't know how many people are just afraid to check their credit. They hadn't checked their credit in years. Or they grew up in a household where nobody was a homeowner, so they don't know what that looks like, and they don't know how to think outside of the space that they're in. So I think educating them on credit, encouraging them that they to let them know that they deserve ownership, and then just guiding them by being honest. Hey, if you're not here yet, but let's get you with the right lender. And it might take you 3 months or 6 months or even a year, but if you desire it, you can have it. So I think it starts with the mindset and being honest, and doing that process, just kind of holding their hand. And I think that's one thing that we're good at with Five Star, because we really are working with the client, that buyer, from the beginning to the end of that transaction. And we're educating them along the way. And a lot of buyers, what I've noticed about, to me, there's like two type of buyers, maybe three, but it's either the buyer who doesn't have the credit but has the income,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't have the income but they have the credit. So at my brokerage, I teach my agents to be solution driven. If they have the credit but not the down, what's next? If I'm on the wayside, let's find a down payment assistance program. Let's negotiate, on closing costs. Let's see a lender that would match a builder's rate. Like, what is it going to take us? What is the solution to get this buyer into a house? And then those that don't have, that have the savings, but they don't have the credit, what lender is going to work with them for a couple of months to get them where they need to be credit score wise? So I think it's just about, for me, I root for the underdog. I want everybody to win. So it's like, if they tell me they have this to work on, my goal and my obsession is to get them to the closing table, period.
So how is it, because you're touching on something that, again, we have individuals who will be competing in a very competitive market, especially if they're first time homeowners. And
Mhm.
you have a lot of investors who come in and, they're able to buy out the block sometime and they're able to put more money down. How do you keep that first time homeowner encouraged, after they may lose out on a couple of deals and they just feel like they don't have how do you keep those individuals encouraged so that they can get to the finish line?
Mhm. So I think it's like a constant, almost a friendship, Once you build a trust with someone and you set the expectation that, hey, you might not win the first bid or the second or the third, but I'm in the game with you. I'm gonna stay, by your side. So, and then I think another thing is having good relationships. I have really solid relationships with investors, with people who flip homes, with builders, and I'm able to negotiate on my buyer's behalf. So I think the most important thing to keep them encouraged is to set the expectation up front. This is what to expect. And if we do these things, eventually it will happen. And what's for you is for you. Um, yeah, what's for you is for you. And my buyers that work with our company, they trust us. And if they don't win a deal, we just go to the next one. We focus on
Mm.
the next deal.
In real estate right now, especially in Huntsville, I
Mhm.
know that inventory is not as high as we like to see. And, you know, if I'm a resident, I'm just going to use our residents, for example, who are, we have a really, really, really strong program, one that allows individuals to develop that game plan. And most people, a part of that game plan is to become a homeowner. They want to get out of that generational poverty.
Mhm.
And we provide tools that allow them the opportunity to do so. But there are so many challenges that they have to overcome. One that I want to go back and touch on is, how do you what are some of the tools that you would use for somebody who doesn't have the credit or is not confident in their credit score right now, but we know that they are right there at the possibility of becoming a homeowner? What are some of those tools that you think would be beneficial
Mhm.
to some of the residents who are in public housing, or people who are just first-time homeowners in general? And how can we take advantage of those tools to help them get across the finish line?
Mhm. So let me tell you what I tell my buyers who have credit challenges. I get them with a lender because you have lenders who work with people who have credit challenges. Why? It sets up their pipeline. They might not be ready now, but they'll be ready if they do A, B, C, and D. So I get them with the lender that tell them, hey, if you pay this off, if you pay this down, and you're consistent and intentional on where we're growing together, I can get you in the house in 6 months. I never recommend, I see a lot of people that recommend, credit repair companies and all this. I never recommend companies like that. I always say start from the foundation. Um, and I've gotten a lot of people approved just that way. It's just that simple. I think some people excuse me. I think some people overthink, and it's like, well, my credit score is a 550. Like, how am I going to, I mean, a 450, how am I going to ever, get up to a 620 when they don't know you can get a house with a 580? If you're VA, they don't even really look at credit score. Like, so it's a lot of things that people don't know and they don't ask the question. The simple answer to answer your question is get with a lender who is willing to work with your clients and give them a roadmap on how they can be successful on purchasing a home. Um, they have credit courses out here. I mean, there are so many people that can help you with credit, but I just want to be very clear. I never recommend to any of my buyers to go and do a credit service or anything. Just start where you are and build off of that.
Okay, okay. So we're in a situation where we have residents who are in a pipe where they're ready, and they don't have a lender, they don't have a broker, they don't know what to do. And so that's just one side of the challenges. But what are some other key challenges that you see in the industry right now facing first-time homeowners? What are some of those key things that some of our residents who are getting ready, what are some of the things that they need to be on the lookout for?
I think the most challenging thing right now is savings. A lot of people don't know that there is a difference between a down payment and closing costs. They're totally different. So the down payment is an absolute. Closing costs can be negotiated. A lot of people don't have 3 to 4% of a home value sitting in their bank account because rent is so high. So they don't have a lot to save. So I think that that's the number one challenge is just having the money saved up where you can purchase a home today. A lot of people just don't have that.
So one of the programs that we have here at the Housing Authority, again, is our family self-sufficiency program,
Mhm.
where individuals who get into the program, they are allowed to put rent into an escrow. And we've seen where we've been able to return to residents anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 to $30,000
Mhm.
back to them once they graduate from the program. So some of the residents that we'll be talking to actually have that money available to put down and to add to the value of what they're bringing to the table. And so
Awesome.
those are things that help those residents, but
Mhm.
sometimes they still miss out because they don't understand. Again, yeah, I might have down payment. I don't know how to negotiate closing
Mhm.
costs. I don't know if a lender will accept X, Y, and Z. So as a person who's new, how do
Mhm.
I avoid feeling like I'm getting taken advantage of because I have this money?
Mhm.
And, if my banker or whoever understands that I have this money, how can I use that for leverage, knowing that that down payment or closing might not necessarily be a challenge for me? How can I use that as leverage as a first time homeowner?
So for first time home buyers, I feel like it's always important to work with an agent. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an agent. I'm saying that because it's the truth. Because
Hmm.
the things that you're unsure about, your agent is going to keep you abreast of. And you're not going to ask questions on important things if you don't know if it's important. You just don't know. Um, as far as down payment and your savings, there are some predatory lending out there and some people that might take advantage of knowing that you have $30,000 and whatever the situation is. But when you're with an agent and that agent is educating you, it's always a plus to have some type of reserve in your bank account.
Hmm.
Even when you're going through the lending process, they want to know that you have 2-3 months of reserve to cover your mortgage payment and things like that. Now closing costs, it's very hard for a buyer who's never bought to negotiate closing costs with an adamant seller. So you want to get somebody who's an advocate for you on your behalf. So you make sure you get the best deal, you're treated fairly, that everything is, up and down. So I always say for buyers, always make sure that you're using an agent that you trust, someone that is going to let you know, hey, the down payment and the closing cost is just the start. You got to make sure you have a home inspection. You got to make sure you have, the title is clear. You got to make sure you do all these things that you don't think about because you've never done it.
So I'm glad you brought that out. That was actually where I was going. You touched on having somebody to represent you as your
Mhm,
agent. And then you talked about the trust of that agent. Because again, if we're dealing with individuals who have been disenfranchised, who
mhm,
don't really trust, how
mhm,
important to have somebody on your side that you can trust is very, very critical because
mhm.
again, they become the spokesperson for you and they become the advocate for you so that you don't get yourself caught up in a crazy situation. So I'm glad you brought that out because again, you're dealing with folks who may be the first time in their family that they are going to be homeowners, and they need people who they can trust, who they can lean on, who can become the advocates for them. And so I'm glad you brought those points out, because again, we're trying to create more homeowners than
Yes.
the average housing authority around the country, because I believe that that's the way to freedom, and that's the way for families not to have to depend on the support for all their life. And I really truly believe that's one of the ways that we're going to see some of the generational curses leave our communities, is that we provide home ownership opportunities for our residents. So I'm glad you brought those points out. Another thing that I want to ask you is just talking about how real estate has evolved over the years for minorities. What are some of the things that you've seen that has benefited minorities and especially first-time homeowners over the last few years?
Mhm. Um, there are a lot of programs for Black and Brown people, specifically for minorities. I've seen an increase in down payment assistance programs. I've seen private sectors start building more affordable housing, which helps minorities, because we all know that we don't have a lot of homeowners in the Black and Brown community. So, but minority owned businesses now. I see a lot of people that are of minority getting into construction, getting into appraisals, getting into home inspections. All those things collectively matter on value, you know. So I think we're making strides, but we're still challenged with things like gentrification, predatory lending, redlining, steering you into a certain community, appraisal bias. So we still have a long way to go, but I think we're chipping at the block, one homeowner, one house at a time. But I do see a lot of more diversity on this side of the fence than I did 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I got into real estate.
So
Still have
there's
a
just
long way to go.
right. But there are more opportunities, more ways for individuals to become homeowners, and so that's very important. And
Mhm.
just kind of going back to the beginning of this conversation, you shared some very um, important information with us, because oftentimes individuals get stuck. And
Mhm.
the first thing that you talked about was seeing yourself in a different light. Before we close, I really just wanted you to hone in on that again and just kind of talk about, man, where you are right now doesn't necessarily mean that's where you got to be for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
Um, you had to have a plan. You had to have maybe a mentor or somebody that you could grab and lock arms with. Talk about how that process was. Even though you had a plan, what did
Mhm.
it take to fulfill that plan for you, so that you could become the person that you are today? Because I think that'd be very important for somebody who may listen to this podcast and be able to put that plan together. What does it take to complete the plan altogether?
You have to be almost insane to think outside the block you grew up on. And I had, like I said, I had a amazing mom. Um, and I always had big dreams. And most people, when a challenge happens, like me, getting pregnant at 19 and thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? But I still had a passion for something, and that was to be more. It was never enough. So for anybody who feels like they don't deserve it, it starts with your mindset. First, you have to know that you deserve everything that you desire, and what you desire, God is going to provide for you. If I could say that here,
Mhm.
and you just have to be disciplined and intentional, very intentional about where you see yourself. And you have to be almost insane to see yourself there at the highest level. So when I look back, I remember, I'm gonna tell you a story real quick. I remember I was going through some things when I first moved to Huntsville, and I ended up moving out of my aunt's house and getting my own place. And I was by myself. It was just me and my son. And we're gonna fast forward. He's like 9. He's in the car, and I'm having a meltdown. I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I'm not making enough money. I'm not. He's 23 now, and I'm like, I'm not making enough money. I don't know how I'm gonna send you to college. He was like, Mom, I'm 9, but I'm already thinking about what does your future look like. And he said to me, and I said, I have no talent. I can't sing. I can't dance. I can't do anything. And he was like, Mom, you're good with people. And I said, and he said, you like houses. He is the reason why I went and got my real estate license at 9 years old, because I was like, I'm going to do something that I'm passionate about, that I have to love. And real estate was it. But he planted that seed. So I'm saying that to say, when I started real estate years ago, I worked a full-time job and went to my real estate courses from 5 to 10 o'clock at night for 4 weeks. I crammed it for 4 weeks. And when I thought about it, all I could think about is, this is just 30 days of my entire life. So when people, if you want something, if you water it down, almost compact it into just a few moments in time, people will live life different and think themselves in a higher position, if that makes sense. But yeah, I was like, this is going to be 30 days of my life, and it changed my life. Just that one mindset shift changed my life.
That is very, very rich. And I'm glad you shared that story with us, because again, where we sit as a housing authority, we have close to 7,000 families that we are responsible for. And I'm sure on one of these platforms that this will be shared on, somebody's going to hear that, and it's going to give them the extra motivation and inspiration that they need to be able to get over that hump. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we close out today? This has been rich. Time flies. And anything that you might want to share that I didn't ask you that you think will be a blessing to somebody, please share.
The only thing I feel like I have to say is, with my company, we don't care about the number. Meaning, I don't care if you're trying to buy a $500,000 house, $1 million house, or $100,000 house. We only care, or my company was started because I have a passion for my culture. I have a passion for wealth. I have a passion for sharing. And this is my purpose. And this is what I love and enjoy doing. So it doesn't matter if you're a home buyer and you're approved for 100,000, 150,000, or $500,000. I treat everyone with value. Everyone has value. And you never know who knows someone else, because relationships, when I started my company, it was more about the relationship that I would build with a person versus what I would make. Because my goal is, when I leave here, I want people to think of me and my company and say, it doesn't matter what the person looked like or how much money they had in their bank account. Her goal was to create home ownership, and her goal was to increase generational wealth within the Black and Brown community.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being on today. Again, share this on all your social media platforms. I want to thank those who will get the opportunity to listen to this podcast. This has been rich. We got a lot of folks who are getting ready to become homeowners. So those who are listening, you learn a lot. Thank you for listening to Life in the Bricks podcast. You'll be able to hear this on all your social media platforms. Thank you, Lindsay Pruitt, for joining us with 5 Star Real Estate.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one thing. You can follow me or go look at my content. I'm on TikTok. I am on Facebook, Instagram, 5-Star Real Estate. So please feel free to follow me, inbox me, DM me any questions you may have. And I'm located in Madison, Alabama.
All right. Well, thank you. That ends the show for today. This has been Life in the Bricks podcast. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Tony, for having me.
No problem. We've come to the end of the podcast today. Please share the link on all your social media platforms. We hope that you all will join us again next time. Until then, keep serving and keep pushing. This has been another amazing episode of Life in the Bricks podcast. Peace.